lighting's not great in the garage right now, so I pulled it outside to get some better lighting for a walk around. And as you can see, it's pretty overcast and it's a little chill in the air, so we're expecting a little bit later, so I'm going to try and get this done as quickly as possible. All right, I was asked, maybe even prodded a little bit, to do a 6-month review of ownership on this 392. So I thought maybe I'd cover a few things that I would change or things I like, maybe answer a few questions for people who are thinking about ordering even a JL, not necessarily the 392, and maybe some things that you may want to add or consider in your ordering process. So here we go. Some of the things I've noticed are not going to be necessarily a 392. They might be a JL body or a JL model, not necessarily just 392. I guess I'll start with one that most people have, or a lot of people have asked about, is the inner fender liner on this 392, and the cause for maybe it dropping down or getting a little bit misshapen or dewarped. Talking to the dealer, they had not heard of anybody except one other person talk about the same thing happening to them. The thing just kind of flopping down, catching on the wheel, and then getting either torn up or rubbed. Come to find out, the guy bought the Jeep in Utah, drove it back about 5 to 6 hour drive back to Idaho. When he got to Idaho, that's when he noticed it had happened. Long road trip, a lot of heat generated, and that's what happened with mine. It was about a 5-6 hour drive, and same thing happened. Talked to a local shop here. One of the guys in the shop deals with a lot of these builds, and they've built several 392s, and every single one of them has come in with the same issue. And the general consensus is it is the heat that is generated from the engine, especially on the driver's side, that's causing that really thin plastic to maybe lose its shape, melt a little bit, or weaken, and then it just drops out of the way. So with that in mind, I purchased some inner fenders that I'm going to install. I'll make a video about that. I'm not sure if I'll start it today. That's why I've got the jack, and the jack stands out. I've got a trip coming up to Moab and places south this next week, so I don't know if I'll have time to get it all on, so it might be after that trip. But I'll make a video of that. My plan with that is going to be to install it, and I'm going to try and leave, and I'll discuss it in the video, some of that plastic inner fender in there, and I'll explain why and everything. But on this walk around, one thing I've been asked about is the size of the tires. Those are 35s, 1250s. I do not have any rubbing issues. They're on the stock rims. No rubbing, even in full articulation, no problems, anything like that. If you were to go to 37s or larger, you are going to have some rubbing issues. You're going to have, some different issues with clearance. One of the things would be, obviously, to do a fender chop. Take this out. I don't like that. I like the 35s. I like the gap, that the space in the wheel well. If I fender chopped it, I would feel that I needed to fill that space up more. And then that changes other things. I've got to change maybe spacers, or now a little bit of a lift. I've also then thinking about gearing. A number of things change with just the tires, or having it look right so it doesn't look like a little tiny donut in a big giant cavity hole. So if you're thinking about putting tires on larger than 35s, you may start needing to think about the process that's going to start you down, as far as gears, lift, maybe a fender chop, spacers, different things like that. Right now, the 35s, I like the look. I like how it feels the tire wells. I don't have a problem with gearing. Matter of fact, the local shop here that I've had them do work on my past Jeeps said because the torque, there's so much low-end torque in this new engine, and with the 8-speed transmission, that there's no need to re-gear 35-inch tires. or when you put 35-inch tires on this 392, there's really no need to re-gear it. It drives great. I notice no loss of power, and you know, I'm happy with the ride. While I'm on tires, I've had people ask about road noise, or, you know, the Jeeps are famous for a lot of noise in the cab. One of the ways, and I'll talk about that when I get inside the Jeep, but one of the ways to minimize that is obviously with tires. These are all-terrain Terra Grappler G2s. They're one of the quieter tires in the all-terrain class. You can research the tires and you can see kind of their noise rating on them, and these are have a good rating when it comes to road noise. So again, I like them, but most of the time I drive with the top off anyway, and road noise is clearly going to be an issue because you can't hear anything anyway. All right, coming around to the front, I covered the lack of a front-facing camera on my previous review video when it was new. I go back and forth on it now. I've talked to the dealership and I got a price. They cannot, or at least right now do not, offer the factory front camera. They've got a stack of Taser, I think was the model that they've got there. The cost of the camera is around $500 or so, and then the install is about another $400. So you're looking about $900 to put an aftermarket. One of the problems you have with the aftermarket front-facing camera is you won't get the lane indicators for the tires. So by using that camera, the factory one gives you the marks of where your tires are for placement. So if you're thinking aftermarket, you kind of lose out on that versus the factory one, so something to consider. You know, one of the reasons I would get a front-facing camera too is this hood is a lot taller than my old JK, so it's a little more difficult to look over the top of it. One thing people have asked about is these Shorty antennas. I have no problem with getting signal. I have heard people talk about having the longer antenna assists with height. So if you lift your Jeep or do anything with it, having the stock long antenna gives you an indication if your clearance, if you're going to go under something that you may not have the clearance. So that's the only real reason I see. I like the look of the Shorty antenna, and it doesn't affect the signal, satellite radio, local stations, or even GPS mapping. I don't seem to have a problem at all. All right, coming around this way, the steps covered in a previous video as well. Happy with them. It took a while. I was concerned that I may not like the look, but they've grown on me, and I covered the reason why and everything in a previous video, so look at that. But again, happy with those steps. Continuing around, these taillight guards, kind of just a vanity thing. I didn't really lose any taillights out of my last Jeep, but I understand they're expensive. I threw them on there. I like the look of them more so than just the protection. I like the aggressive look of them, and that's really the main reason I did it. Protection is a secondary thing. I did it more for vanity look, but fairly easy to go on. If you watched one of my other videos, you saw the struggle I had with this area here around the hinges. That brings me to my next topic. Okay, so with the hinge, this Mopar factory, or the Mopar reinforced hinge here, I would not have done that again. And the reason I say that is all it really does is bolt to the tailgate and extend that surface area, the mounting area on the tailgate. The fail point, a lot of hinges or tailgates, the fail point is actually at the hinge itself, and this is still the stock hinge. But I will tell you, I would have saved the money on this hinge, and then I would have done an aftermarket hinge that actually goes into the frame of the body of the Jeep, bolts on inside, has a plate inside. It's all, you know, heavy duty hinges, not just the plate. I would have saved the money, not had this put on by the factory, and then just put on an aftermarket. TerraFlex has one. I really like the TerraFlex one. This may be something that I end up just pulling off eventually and putting that on. The reason for that is I don't do a lot of aggressive driving or, you know, rock crawling, but if you come off a shelf or come off a rock and a rock happens to catch either, not necessarily the bumper, but the back end of the tire and hits, and the weight of the Jeep is resting on that tire, that fail point is here at the hinges. You get that door to tweak, you know, a number of different things. I'm not sure that this Mopar tire carrier is going to be the best for that. There's been the shop that I talked about, they've talked about seeing a number of these fail in that scenario or a couple other scenarios. So I got to keep an eye on that. And again, this may be something I change out soon with an entire system that goes all the way into the Jeep. So just to keep that in mind, if it's something you're going to put larger than 35s, or depending on your driving style, something you might want to keep in mind. All right, since I'm back here at the back of the Jeep, bumper. My last JK, I had a nice TerraFlex bumper on there. I was planning on putting a bumper on here as well. I found one company up north that I like, their bumper. The only issue is these sensors. People are reporting putting aftermarket bumpers on Jeeps that have these sensors, and it's causing a bunch of gremlins. It's because the angle on this sensor, the angle on the bumper might be different, a little bit off or a little bit different than the angle on the aftermarket bumper. Therefore, the sensor doesn't maybe read the same. You're reading more of the ground, or some of them I've seen are reading the bottom of the tire, and it's sending all sorts of alerts and problems to your dashboard. So I'm going to wait on a bumper. I would like to get an aftermarket bumper. I just can't, I don't want to fight with a lot of gremlins right now until I find one or somebody that can put it in, that they're pretty confident all the angles and all the you know, areas are going to be covered as factory sensors. All right, while I'm at the back of the Jeep, I'll go over this tire carrier or the plate that I put on there. I think it was a Rough Country. You can put a video together of it going on. So far, so good. I've taken the tire off 1 or 2 times to kind of check it out, make sure everything's tight and there's no movement. It's been a good addition, at least for this current hinge reinforcement. If you noticed, I've had to extend these bump stops. I had to get the longer ones. So if you decide to lift and pull your tire out a little bit, you'll have to get new ones of these. I think Rough Country also made these as well, and they're, you know, just they pop off, pop on, or in the same mounting holes. Not a big deal, but it just helps with that any flex in that tire kind of moving as you drive, or on the trails, or even down the freeway. Keeps that tire pretty solid and sturdy. Although before I put them on there, there's a little bit of gap from the old ones, and I would pull on this tire and there was no movement. So that tire carrier plate extension worked out real well. And that gave me that clearance for a 35-inch tire without rubbing on the bumper. All right, continuing around, I put this, I don't know if you can see it in there, this little rubber tubing in here between the fender and the body. There's a lot of videos online that talk about putting this in here. That has been great. I've had it on several trails, flipping up rocks, and no little rocks, twigs, or sand gets caught in there. It just blows out or brushes away easily. I'd highly recommend just picking up some of that and tucking it in there. Easy enough to do, cheap, and it's more of a relieves the frustration of trying to pick out all those little rocks. Okay, that's about my list of questions for the outside. I'm going to move to the inside now and cover some of the questions that I've had from the inside, which is great because it is getting chilly and my hand is getting cold. So I'm gonna move to the inside. We'll talk about most of the questions from the inside. Okay, one thing I covered previous video is the lack of storage in these JLs. One of the ways I alleviated was, of course, this little saddle thing I purchased. Covered that before, so I won't go into that too much. Okay, so speaking of storage, one thing I really liked in my JK was I had a best top under seat storage. That was that metal box that would slide in and out. It was locking and it was secured under the seat to the bolts here and on both sides. The JL is not set up for that. There is no space under that seat. You see I've got a rag under here and that's about it. But there is no space to get a locking box under there. It was convenient. You go to the trails or go shopping, go hiking or whatever, and I usually leave the top off like I've said. And people easily can reach in and steal whatever. So I would keep, valuables in there, wallet, my heater, gun, Roscoe, whatever you want to call it, keep that in there just to kind of secure it up. But that's one thing I miss. I know they make aftermarket ones that you can put metal, like liners inside or entire new center consoles, but it's just not as convenient. So anyway, one thing I've kind of given up, and I'll look for another solution at some point, but right now that's one of the differences I don't like with the JL versus the JK. Okay, I've covered the seats or the seat covers in a previous video. I'm happy with them. I know people are, mortally offended by covering this leather seats in neoprene, but they've been a good addition and I'm happy with them. One thing about the seats though, this particular company, the seat covers, it asks you if they're going on leather or they're going on cloth. So I'm sure that there's something different, whether it's the liner between them or, I don't know, the material. So you've got to, you may want to look at, if you're going to do it, make sure you differentiate between leather and cloth. But one of the things I was concerned about was the seat warmers. And I did not realize that, like another car I have, if the temperature outside gets below a certain amount, the seat warmers and the steering wheel automatically kick on. And so I'm driving down the road the other day, it's cold, and I noticed my rear end and my hands were getting warm, and I realized that automatically the seat warmers and the steering wheel came on. So with the seat covers, the seat warmers function just fine. It got hot enough that I turned them off, and now I got to go through all the programming and see how I can take that setting off so they don't automatically come on if the temperature reaches a certain level. Okay, so this clearly is not my daily driver. Like I said, it's a 6-month review. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I'm at about 2,600 miles, a little over 2,643. That's how many miles I've got on this in 6 months. So again, not my daily driver. So take this review, 6-month review, with that in mind. Okay, so one of the things I've been asked about is gas mileage on this. So I'm going to turn this on. I do not commute in this. I do not drive, other than just kind of on the weekend, whatever, or going out on the trails or doing a drive up in the mountains or something like that. Or if I'm just feeling like I want to go for a ride. But so my gas mileage, it looks like because it's cold, it looks like one of my tires has gone down a little bit. So I got to top that off. But gas mileage, let me cancel out of this. Let's see if it'll let me. Okay, right now my gas mileage is showing 12.8 miles per gallon. I have not reset this from the day that I picked it up. I have not set it for, highway driving. I've not set it for trails. I've not set it for stop and go, little, very slow going on some of the trails. And that's where the average is right now, is 12.8. That's actually dropped. I drove it this weekend a little bit. I was at 13.5. I let a couple people drive the Jeep, and they had a heavy foot because they wanted to try out the engine. And so that may have dropped it a little bit below 13. I have seen this go up as high as 16.1 or 2, and it's about at its lowest right now that I've ever really noticed, at 12.8. I will tell you, because of this 392, if you're worried about gas mileage, this is not the vehicle for you, because not only does it probably not have the best gas mileage, you also are required to put premium gas in. So you're going to be paying more with Brandon's America. We've got our gas prices are going through the roof, and you're going to be paying more for gas as well. So that's kind of the average. Again, I don't really check it highway versus trail versus everyday city driving, so it's really not a good indication of what truly I may be getting. All right, one of the questions I got about the screen protector that I put on was the responsiveness of the screen when I was pushing the buttons or pushing the controls. And I will tell you, I don't see any indication, any difference in the controls of the responsiveness on the screen. Everything seems to operate as normal, and I like the extra protection when it comes to protecting that screen from all the dust that I get when I drive topless. I'm not dragging my finger across a factory screen. This glass screen is a lot easier to replace if it does get scratched up, but it's not a cheap plastic screen. It's glass. There's no adhesive that sticks to the original factory screen. It just kind of sucks up on there, and it'll pull off with a little suction cup or something. I like it. I don't see any responsive issues or any issues with the touchscreen not being as responsive. People have asked me about the road noise. You can buy I don't have it on here right now. Well, I have the top on, but I've got the sunshade as well. But you can buy that liner, the headliner that goes in the tops of these Jeeps, at least for the Freedom or the hardtop. I opted not to get that because, again, it was just more money that I would pay for, where probably 90% of my driving is without the top on. So I'd just be ended up wasting money for a headliner. All right, I'm looking at my notes here, and one of the other things that people ask is about the full-time four-wheel drive on these new 392s. So it is full-time four-wheel drive. I really don't notice much of a difference. I mean, it seems very sure-footed. I'm coming from a JK to this, but it's in 4 high basically all the time, and it handles great. The shop that is down south here that builds a lot of Jeeps asked me about it as well. I said I haven't had an issue. I like how it drives. He was a little apprehensive, he said, when they first got their first 392s in the shop to start building them. And he said after driving them around for several of them, he actually really likes the full-time four-wheel drive that these come with, and seems to be a fan. I like how it drives. So there might be some purists out there that don't like full-time four-wheel drive, but I think it drives great. You can get these tasered and take away that full-time four-wheel drive. The shop that I talked about that has done work on these Jeeps, he's done that to one Jeep where the guy wanted the option to just be in two-wheel drive. And I questioned why, and he said the guy just wanted to be able to do burnouts. So if that's your goal, you can taser it, take it out of that full-time four-wheel drive so you can do burnouts in a Jeep. But that's not me, so I'm happy with how it's laid out. All right, so one of the things I wanted to kind of point out, and I'm going to try and recreate this again. I noticed when I was out on one of the trails, that when I put the vehicle in off-road mode, pushing the button, and then the off-road pages come up, but at the same time on both sides, and it's not doing it now obviously, but on both sides of the mirrors, the little indicator for the lane warning indicator lights came on both mirrors. So it was basically indicating that there was an obstruction in my blind spot. Well, I attributed it to, I was on a trail, there were trees, rocks, different things like that, and so I didn't really think about it. So I thought, oh, it just throws it on there maybe to remind you that you're in off-road mode. But when I drove into areas that were, wide open, that had no trees or had nothing around, those lights were staying on. They were staying illuminated on both mirrors. It wasn't until I pushed the button and actually even turned off the engine and then turned it back on that those lights went out. So right now you can see they're not on, the button is pushed, and it's in the off-road pages, and those lights are not on. So it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with anything, between the button or the pages you're on. So I don't know if that was a little glitch that maybe corrected itself, or turning it off and on, restarting it. I don't know what happened there, but it's not coming back on. I'll see if I can recreate it next week and see if something's, causing it. That was before I had the taillight guards. So it wasn't anything with the taillight guard that may have been indicating or throwing a, something to trigger that signal. All right, talking about other little issues that were weird, and I've seen other people talk about this, is it happened to me probably 5-6 times at right when I purchased the Jeep. Got it home. The first 2-3 times I went back into the garage, or a few times that I was somewhere else and stuck the the Jeep in reverse. These indicator lane indicators did not illuminate. They would not come on, and they would not show up when I stuck the car in reverse. I'd turn the car off, turn it back on, stick it in reverse, and they would be there. I noticed several people on the interwebs talked about having the same issue, seeing it when they stuck the car in reverse. The indicators would come on sometimes and wouldn't. I will tell you, after probably the first 5-6 times of that happening, I have not seen it happen at all since. So I don't know if there was, a resetting the, or turning it off and on a number of times. Who knows? But that little gremlin has gone away. But that did pop up in the first week or two of ownership. Overall, I'm very happy with the purchase, even at the inflated prices that they're charging now. I guess the question is, would I make the purchase again? Yes, I would, but there are a number of things I would change, as I mentioned throughout this video. So hopefully that helps anybody out there that's making a decision on whether they're going to make a purchase. And I don't think all of these things are necessarily just to the 392. I think it's also to this JL body style. And I see the rain is starting on the windshield, so I'm going to pull in and go warm up. Thanks for watching.